recording.
Welcome those who are just signing in and getting admitted. We're just going to wait another minute or so, and then we'll get going, and I'll explain how things are going to go. So welcome to those who are here, and we'll just get going in just a minute. Well, thank you to everyone who is attending this afternoon, or this morning, actually. To respect everyone's time, we'll get started on schedule. Welcome to our town hall on paid parking and whatever else you would like to talk about. For those that I don't know, I'm Mayor Sean Krausert, and during last fall's election campaign, I did some Zoom town halls and received feedback that it'd be a great thing to continue. So based on that, I'm planning to do 3 or 4 every year. This is how it will work. I'll take the first 5 or 10 minutes to provide some updates. And for the rest of the time, I'm opening it up to you to ask whatever questions you might have. And the questions don't need to relate to the update I'm providing today. If you'd like to speak, use the chat function and send a message to register to speak, and your name will be added to the list. When you hear your name called, the meeting host will unmute you and give you permission to start the video when it's your turn to speak. If you feel more comfortable submitting an anonymous question to be asked by the moderator, you can follow the same process. Send a message to register to speak and type your question instead. Please sure to have your microphones muted and videos off unless you've been called upon to speak. If we don't get to all the questions, you can email them to parking@canmore.ca if they're related to parking, or you can send them to me at sean.krausert@canmore.ca. I really look forward to hearing people's questions, and we'll stay here through the whole hour as long as there's questions. But if there's not questions, then we'll wrap it up. There are some very simple ground rules. Please try to keep your comments and questions to a maximum of 5 minutes per person so that we can get to as many people as possible during the next 60 minutes. And while I'm sure I don't need to remind everyone, I would ask that everyone remain respectful this morning. So let's get started. We're going to do a brief presentation on paid parking, and then we'll open up to questions. So in 2021, paid parking was implemented at Quarry Lake. And this year, we will see paid parking implemented in the town center. I'm going to provide an overview of what you can expect to see with the program. As you may recall, paid parking was approved in 2019, but delayed due to COVID. A number of changes have been made to the original program based on feedback from residents on the Quarry Lake program and learnings from the town of Banff's implementation last year. The biggest change is the introduction of the Canmore resident parking permit, which will allow permit holders to park for up to 3 hours per day in all paid zones. The resident permit will also allow you to park in all Canmore resident parking permit only zones around the town center and Quarry Lake. The map, which you can find at canmore.ca/parking, has all of the details for the town center program. So these include paid parking will be in effect 7 days per week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The green areas on the map are paid parking. There are 2 seasons, a peak season rate between May 15th and October 14th, and that's $3 per hour. And a low season rate, October 15th to May 14th, and that's $2 per hour. Canmore resident parking permit holders get up to 3 hours free in all paid zones per day. Now, blue areas on the map are free 9-hour parking and are within a 5 to 10 minute walking distance from the town center. And the red areas on the map are Canmore resident parking permit zones. Accessible stalls and loading zones remain free. Moving up to Quarry Lake, this map, also available at canmore.ca/parking, has all of the details for Quarry Lake. The paid parking in effect 7 days per week during park hours. Once again, 2 seasons, May 15th to October 14th is $10 for 2 hours. And in the low season, October 15th to May 14th is $2.50 per hour. Canmore resident parking permit holders get up to 3 hours free in all paid zones per day. Red areas on the map are Canmore resident parking permit zones, and accessible stalls remain free. So in order to get going with the process, and in order, especially if you're a resident, in order to be set up in order to take advantage of the Canmore resident only zones, registration for the Canmore resident parking permits will open the week of May 2nd. You can sign up for yours when registration opens up at canmore.ca/parking. If you have a Quarry Lake parking permit, you will need to register again, as this is a new system. Okay. So each time you are parking in a payment zone, you will need to register your vehicle. And the easiest way to do so is to download the Blinkay, that's BLINKAY, Blinkay app to your smartphone and set up an account. From there, it will take you only a few seconds each time you need to use your free time in the payment zone. Be able to do it right from your driver's seat. We expect the program to start in June, probably late June, and possibly early July. We're waiting on equipment, which is the story of the pandemic with various shortages. That said, I encourage you to make sure you've signed up for your resident permit in advance for a smooth transition. Once again, that's opening the week of May 2nd. So stay tuned and check in to canmore.ca/parking. Okay, now I'm going to open it up to for you to ask whatever questions you might have about what you've just heard or anything else in general. Once again, if you'd like to ask or if you'd like to speak, use the chat function and send a message to register to speak, and your name will be added to the list. When you hear your name called, the meeting host will unmute you and give you permission to start video when it's your turn to speak. If you feel more comfortable submitting an anonymous question to be asked by the moderator, you can follow the same process and send a message to register to speak and type your question instead. So once you've been called upon, please be sure to have your microphone, right now have your microphones muted and your videos off, but then when you're called upon, you can turn on your video and you'll be unmuted. So I would look to Adam, our moderator at Register to Speak, to see if we have anyone who would like to ask a question.
Thank you very much, Mayor Krausert. We do have our first question, and it's from Karen Booth. Can we unmute Karen? And Karen, take it away.
There we go.
Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I actually have many questions, but I'll just take one question now and resubmit.
Okay.
What do you do for seniors who do not have, or anyone who do not have smartphones?
Yes, so there will be, there's equipment, just like you'd see where paid parking is rolled out elsewhere, and they can use a debit card or a credit card and to go punch in their parking. The only thing that will not be available is we're trying to stay away from a cash system. So to insert dollar bills or coins, trying to stay away from it because that really increases the cost. And it actually becomes a pretty big burden on the system. So if you don't have a smartphone, you can simply go punch in your license plate and your and use your credit card or your debit card to pay.
But that is difficult for seniors who have mobility issues, who use walkers, for instance, and can't travel far. It just adds another element of complexity to their
Right.
day and takes away their independence, because they will not be able to do their errands as easily.
Right. So the accessible parking zones are still free. So they'll still be there for those who need, as I call it, because my wife has as one of the disability passes, I call it rockstar parking. So the rockstar parking is still available, and that's at no cost. For those with mobility challenges, I'm trusting if they're driving a vehicle, the paid parking booths will be appropriately located. So I mean, hopefully they can park close to where there's one of these several of these booths, what you'll see on the street.
Mhm. I still think it's going to be a challenge for many seniors. My mother is
Well,
like, I
that's,
can see her giving up
yeah.
her independence because she will not be able to handle these multiple steps, which is unfortunate.
Well, that's part of the learnings of the program. I mean, we're learning from where it has been taking place in other places, and I think for the most part, people have been able to navigate them. But if there are things that we determine, determine that there are needed more accessible spaces or some adjustments to the system, those are certain things that we can adapt to over time. I certainly hope that perhaps you'll be able to work with your mother and help her adjust to the system, because it is going to be an adjustment for all of us.
Thank you.
Adam, our next speaker, or our next question.
Much, Karen. Just a reminder, if people want to speak, just send a message to register to speak, or just send a question and we can ask those. While we wait for another person who wants to ask a question, we do have an anonymous question submitted in the chat. So that is, what if you don't have a computer to get a permit?
Excellent question. If you don't have a computer to get a permit, then I would suggest that there's a couple of things that you could take a look at. And I think Sally Cottle, our CEO, can jump in. But my thought would be that you can actually go down to reception to get assistance, or the library where they have computers for use. Sally, do you have something to add to that?
Nope, I just wanted to make sure you remembered the library. So
Yeah.
the library has free computers for folks to use if you don't have one yourself.
Thank you very much, Sally and Mayor Krausert, for that. Karen Booth has another question. Karen, go ahead, please.
Oh,
There we
Karen,
go.
you're muted. There we go.
I
Thank you.
keep pressing the button, but it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Up in Rundleview, they have for Quarry Lake parking, it's Rundleview parking permit holders only right now. So is that going to change? That's going to be open to all Canmore residents
Yes.
then? And so I'm assuming those signs will not be taken down, or new signs put up, or and like, do we have to keep registering and living in Rundleview for that?
On that last question, you would just have to register for the Canmore resident zone. I do know that there will be, actually, I'll turn it over to administration, because I do believe that for residents on that block, you will also get some guest parking, a guest parking permit. So if you have somebody coming that's obviously not a Canmore resident, and you could provide them with a guest parking. But Mr. Sarte, can you enlighten us on that front?
Thank you, Mayor Krausert, and thanks, Karen. Yes, the signage will be replaced, and If you have a Canmore resident pass, and this will help with Canmore businesses as well, they'll be able to come park in your neighborhood. So your visitors, your from town visitors will be able to park there. If you have an out of town visitor, then you'll be able to register their plates using visitor passes.
Okay, and I have another comment if there's nobody else in the queue.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Can the system not be made more or easier for the public? Because having to punch in and punch out your time in the downtown core, to me, is labor intensive. Can there not be a system where Canmore residents for one full year have access the whole time to that parking spot? And it's up to the bylaw or whoever to monitor how much time they're in. It's really kind of, I don't think it's very user friendly, and I don't think it needs to be that complicated for people. And this would eliminate issues for seniors or people that don't have smartphones. So, I mean, like at Quarry Lake, from what I understand, you can park at Quarry Lake all year. You just enter the session and then it's good for one full year. Why can something like that not be implemented?
Well, that's changing. That's changing because we are moving to this new system, and it is trying to find that balance that provides residents with the availability and the free parking for certain periods of time of day, and resident zones. But we simply do not have the resources to be able to basically time every vehicle. This is the usual process that is being used here is what you'll see when you go to pretty much, well, every place I've ever been with parking, is that there is an onus on the driver to record their time. The bonus here is that as while we still have to do that as a resident, the first 3 hours of the day, whether we're in Quarry Lake or whether we're downtown, is going to be free. So yes, there is a change. There is going to be an extra step involved, but that's a necessity with moving to the program.
But does it have to be a necessity? Right now, it seems like the program really inconveniences residents of Canmore for the whole year in order to manage tourists in Canmore, which is particularly troublesome in the summer months.
Well, it's actually, it's not all about tourists. It is about recognizing that we have limited parking in the downtown area. We don't have the ability to widen roads, and we don't have land availability, nor is it even desirable to build more parking lots, because it just creates more vehicles, and then you're left with the problem just a short time down the road, and now you're having to try to figure out a solution again. This is really about transportation mode shift. It's really about causing people to think deliberately about their usage of the most highly desirable parking spots. And if you would like to park right in front of where you're going, if you're not, if it's not an accessible spot, which is free, you pay for it. And so if you're going in for an hour appointment, it will cost you $3 or $2. Now, if you're a resident, it's going to be free, but you still, the system still requires that you register, so that when the monitoring is done by the bylaw, they're able to determine if a vehicle is properly paid or registered or not, which is the normal course of things in, like I say, every municipality I've ever experienced. For every vehicle to be tracked as how long they're downtown, and to allow it to be basically a free-for-all for Canmore residents. First of all, how can you possibly track that unless you're already recorded? And secondly, it doesn't do anything as far as mode shift. It doesn't allow anybody to turn their mind to whether or not they should park on that Main Street parking lot or not. So yes, there is change involved, and it is going to be requiring an extra step.
And when will Roam be accessible for Canmore? It's only accessible to certain areas of Canmore.
Yeah.
And it's been that way
That's-
for a while, and it's
Yeah.
not looking like it's going to change quickly.
Well, I don't know if I would say that. I mean, it's constantly changing. The transit system is still, in its growth period. When we brought it in 2015, 2016 as a local route, was very, very limited. And since then, its frequency and reach expanded somewhat. And just recently, within the last 2 weeks, we've now added an extra bus, and those are 2 separate loops. I've currently put the question to some members of administration: how can we expedite the growth of it forward? My platform during the campaign, as well as some others, was about expanding the reach and frequency of Rome Transit, because that obviously, as you allude to, makes it easier for people to access the downtown area without a vehicle. But more importantly, it contributes to the affordability of Canmore.
So
Karen,
Yeah.
sorry, we do have people waiting in the
Excellent.
queue for another question. We'd be happy to come back to you if you have
will
further
do.
questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
So our next question comes from Leah. We could unmute Leah, and Leah, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hello, hi.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I would like to talk about like a totally different issue, actually.
Yeah,
And
yeah, whatever you like.
I apologize, it's gonna maybe be a longer one. I'd like to talk about childcare in Canmore, especially for the ages of 1 to 5, and how hard it is to find any kind of childcare in Canmore. It's basically impossible to find childcare for 1-year-old. And even in the age group of 2 to 5, you would need a lot of luck to find anything at all. So I thought I'll tell you my story, not because I'm expecting anybody to care about it particularly, but because I think it's representative of what a lot of people are going through in Canmore. I own my own business, so bridging a year of leave was really hard enough. And I cannot simply extend my time away without permanently shutting down. I also have 3 employees who rely on me and would lose their job if I cannot return to work. So you see, just in my case, there are 4 incomes depending on one childcare spot. So if there's any message I'd really like to bring across today, is that childcare doesn't just matter to mothers. We have staff and clients and contractors and consultants, and the work we do also matters. Like, there are people who benefit from the work we do past the confinement of our own home. We do really meaningful things in the community and for people. Building up a business also takes years, so not being able to work can be really damaging, not just to our family, but a lot of people who live off and benefit from our work. I also think this is like particularly problematic in Canmore, because for one thing, living in the Bow Valley is quite expensive. So being in 2-income household versus a 1-income household can really make the difference between being able to live here or having to move away. And then additionally, Canmore has a lot of small business owners, and hospitality and tourism, as well as like medical industries, are quite dominant. And those are industries that historically rely on a strong female workforce. There has been a staffing shortage in Canmore and the Bow Valley in general. And from what I've seen, I believe that the increasingly problematic childcare situation is a contributing factor in it. The wait lists for daycares, such as the Roundhouse, seem endless, and most children end up being on the wait list for years, not months. A lot of children leave the wait list not because they get a spot in the daycare, they leave it because they simply age out of the system. And unfortunately, this has been a situation for years. But combine that now with the increased cost of housing that keeps on forcing day homes out of the valley and the general population growth, it really seems like it's getting worse and worse. There is a new daycare being built in Spring Creek right now, but it's really not even going to be enough to solve the problem. And while we're all like huge advocates for the $10 a day childcare initiative, we do also have to realize that it's going to increase the demand of childcare. People who have not previously been looking for childcare will be looking now. So like, I think it would be a little bit too easy to just point the finger on affordable housing, because I think it's a more complex issue than that. But I also think there's actually more creative solutions out there that we can do to increase the supply of daycare. So daycares are commercial for-profit operations, and bylaws could be modified to encourage more daycares. Like, even in new developments, we list daycares as discretionary uses rather than just permitted uses. And the Canmore Affordable Housing Program doesn't even allow daycares within their rental properties, which seems quite absurd at this point, I have to say. We could also work with the churches who still have spaces available, or look into expanding maybe Elevation Place that has a child minding space that's a bit underused right now. And we should just make it easier for people who want to start a day home or want to work as early childhood educationers.
Yeah.
So the Lawrence Grassy Area Redevelopment Plan has, I think, shed a really good light on how difficult it is even for schools to attract and retain teachers. And we can only imagine how impossible it is for early childhood care workers. Yeah. So
Leah,
I apologize for taking up so much of your time.
No, you've touched on so many things, and it is a very complex issue, because affordability is certainly a contributing factor, and the ability to attract workers. I mean, teachers, physicians, professionals. We have many business owners that can't afford to live here. Lots of people that, mechanics, dental hygienists, they were coming from out of town to work here. The very, very short answer, and it's not going to be the answer you want to hear about childcare, is that's a provincial jurisdiction. The municipality actually doesn't have any say in childcare. We don't have any say on the Canmore daycare, even though that we've facilitated the location of that property. Now, that is not something that is readily able to do because of the lack of land. You're absolutely right. Daycares are private initiatives, and they work with the province to get their license. And so one thing I would, before I will suggest some additional things, and I appreciate your creative solutions because I want to speak to those in a moment. I would definitely be in touch with MLA Rosen, and I would definitely, be adding your voice to those in the province that, we need more daycare here. I definitely have heard this concern from many, and it's because of that reason that I'm open to having any conversations that will help bring some people together, to explore some ideas, to get going on some ideas. Like I say, this isn't something that the municipality itself would do, but myself as mayor would be willing to be involved in those conversations. You mentioned churches, church space. Once again, though, you need to have people that are willing to run those programs and step up, and the economics involved and the attraction of people are certainly some barriers I have to overcome. I have had recently a conversation with a fellow who's looking to start up a daycare, and he's in the initial stages of business plan, trying to find some location. The very problem and the challenge that you raise also gives rise to potential opportunity for that private enterprise to do that. So, I'm available to be part of conversations if that would be helpful. But from a municipal standpoint, there's not a lot that we can do because we don't fund them, we don't regulate them, and the land mass is limited. With something being a permitted versus discretionary use, yes, there's an extra step involved as discretionary, but the fact that it is discretionary does allow something to be developed. It just needs to make sure that it's working with the surrounding area. So I can't help but feel that's a very unsatisfactory answer to a huge issue, but unfortunately, that's the reality of with daycares and municipalities.
Thank you very much for the question, Leah. Mayor Krausert, did you want to say something there?
Yeah, Leah, my email address is on the website, on Canmore website, and it's sean.krausert@canmore.ca. And if you'd like to reach out to me, and if you'd like to grab a coffee and talk about some ideas, maybe there's some people that I can think of that you might spark an idea of who could be introduced to an idea, and maybe we can get some discussion going around that. But that's about the most I can do, but I'd certainly be willing to do that.
Thank you. Mayor Krausert, we have a question submitted on the chat. It's regarding accessible spaces downtown and the Main Street pedestrian zone. So the question is, having more accessible spaces downtown doesn't help if you close Main Street every summer. How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, so I saw that come in earlier, and I was going to turn to that if we had a gap. So thank you for bringing that up, Adam. Of course, that issue is not related to paid parking, because that is what we experienced the last 2 summers in any event. I would look to administration to see if we have had any complaints about being able to find accessible parking. And Mr. Sarte, do you have any data on that?
We have had quite a few conversations since the pedestrianization was first introduced. When that happened, we had to look for additional spots and created additional spots outside of the pedestrian area to be able to get the numbers where they needed to be. And we're quite happy if you are finding issues finding spots, provide that feedback into us, parking@canmore.ca, and let us know the issue that you're having, because it might be a particular location or destination and it's quite busy. We're happy to look at that and add spots if it's needed to ensure that those are available.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, I do recall the additional spots being added the first year there's pedestrianization, and quite frankly, that has not been brought up to me as an issue with people having had that trouble. But as Andy said, please submit that to parking@canmore.ca if that is something you encounter.
Thank you very much for that. And yes, just to the person who asked it, just to encourage you to submit that feedback to parking@canmore.ca to further that conversation if there's specific areas. So we're happy to take more questions, either via the chat or if you'd like to speak. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, we do have a few questions that were submitted in advance. So Mayor Krausert, you spoke to this a little bit earlier in your presentation about a parkade, but could you elaborate on why the town just doesn't build a parkade to create more parking?
Yeah, this has been an idea that has been kicked around for literally 10 years, more than that, in fact, as tourism has begun to grow, as our community grows, as there are more residents and visitors that are wanting to get down to the downtown area. One of the first ideas that comes up is, well, build a parkade. Well, parkades are very, very expensive. And really, they would only add roughly an extra 160 stalls to our parking stock, which is not enough for during peak periods, especially as we look into the future. The parkade would sit largely empty for 7 months of the year, and it would come, as I mentioned, at a price, at a cost of millions of dollars to local taxpayers. It would cost approximately $1 million a year when you annualize that to taxpayers. And right now that amounts to about a 4% tax increase. And so, and a large percentage of the taxpayers would not use it. With paid parking, you actually have those using it paying for it, which is a perfect form of taxation. In that, those who get the benefit, pay for that benefit. And not putting the cost on the rest of the community.
Thanks for that. And just a reminder, if anyone wants to ask a question, please just send a message to register to speak in the chat, and we'll make sure your question gets out. Another question we've received in advance, Mayor Krausert, is can downtown employees get a pass to park all day?
Well, this is being explored. We expect more information soon. I'm a little hesitant in the regard for downtown employees that are residents to get a pass to park all day, because it doesn't do anything with regards to our mode shift, and it will tend to use up our most highly desirable parking, which is not good for those who are coming down, whether they be a resident or a visitor, to either shop or go to a medical appointment or the dentist or whatever. Whenever I've been involved, working for a business that had clientele, I was always told to park furthest away in the lot or park down the street or something. Save the spots for the customers. And so to have employees come and have all day parking in the paid parking just does not make any sense. For those who are residents, you can park for extended periods of time in the Canmore resident zone parking. And there's also free parking beyond that. We are also looking to, there is transit to some parts of town, and we're looking to expand that. There's also the ability for some, definitely not all, to ride their bike or to walk, depending on where you live. I myself am going to have to change my habits. I typically have driven and parked in the lot in behind, by the Union Hall there. And then or in behind the information or the old information center, and Panago there if it was just for less than 4 hours. I'm now moving in the summer months more to riding my bike. It's actually quite a lot of fun, and with the increased pathways from the other side of the highway, I live on Maureen Road. I'm able to get down here quite easily. Now, I recognize that's not for everyone. Transit's also a possibility for me. And then on days when I need to drive or through the winter, I will be looking to park in the resident zone or the free parking zones if I'm going to be there longer than 3 hours. So all of us are going to have to find our way. So the one area that I am giving some additional thought to and would like to speak with council and administration around are those employees who are non-residents, to see if they could buy a pass that they could be treated like residents since they're working downtown. That's still something I have to give a lot of thought to, but given the employee shortages, given the difficulty it is to attract and retain employees in this economic climate, that might be something that would be beneficial, but that's still to be determined.
Thanks very much, Mayor Krausert. Another question submitted. Any chance there can be a short video showing how to use the parking machines? Yeah,
absolutely. Councillor Ma and I have recently recorded a video simply, giving an introduction to paid parking and where to register. That's going to be released when the registration is open. And then it was our intention also then to do a video around use of both the app and the machines themselves. To help people understand how to use those. And so hopefully that will be helpful. I do note in the chat that transit's not a possibility for many areas of Canmore. Yes, as mentioned, we're looking to remedy that over the coming years, and of course, paid parking will help that expansion. because it will be able to fund fare free transit and expand it to areas. I'd like it to see it go down Larch, like it to see go into the Palliser area, like it to see go down Bow Valley Trail and additional additional neighborhoods wherever possible. So stay tuned for that.
That's great, thank you. And just maybe one final reminder to everyone, if you'd like to speak, please just send a message to register to speak in the chat. The requests are starting to slow down, so we might be getting close to being finished, but while we just give one last chance for that, we have one more submitted question in advance, Mayor Krausert, and you spoke to this a little bit in your presentation about where people can park for free around the town center.
Yep.
Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on those exact locations, potential number of stalls in each area, just to give people an idea?
Okay. Yeah. So, free 9-hour parking will be available in a number of spots within a short walking distance of the town center. So if you look at the Elevation Place area there, the average walking time is less than 10 minutes to town center, and there's approximately 75 free spaces there. Then there's on Fairholme Drive, there's 100 spaces with the average walking time of 7 minutes to town center. And then on 7th Avenue, there's approximately 75 spaces, an average walking time of 6 minutes to the town center. And so those are the absolute free. You don't need a resident pass or anything like that. Then in addition to those, there are hundreds and hundreds of spaces in the Canmore resident parking zone that if you're registered, you can park for free all day there as well. And those are immediately adjacent to the downtown area, so very short walking distance. And of course, if you are a Canmore resident and registered, you also get free parking for up to 3 hours in the paid parking areas. So which is right on, right in the downtown area, in the downtown parking lots. You can go there and park for free for up to 3 hours.
Great, thank you. It looks like Jean, I see that you have your hand up. We'll let Jean ask a question. If we could unmute, there we go. Go ahead, Jean.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Jean.
Hi, Sean. This is about the traffic on Main Street. That, to me, that has been just an absolute nightmare. The lights on Main Street, that crosswalk by the bank. I'm surprised somebody hasn't got killed on that crosswalk. It's just terrifying. And the other thing is at the other end, why can we not turn left, which a lot of people do anyway, and sometimes you can't even go straight through. I think it's a terrible mess, and I'd love to know what the logic is.
Yeah, well, I can certainly, I'll turn this over to Andy Asarte in just a moment because his department collects the data. I can tell you, I've definitely heard some questions around the no left turn off of Main Street down at 8th. And a lot of that has to do with traffic flow and opening that up to no longer being a stop, because we are getting a lot of backups across the Bow River and elsewhere. And that was to alleviate that. So it really is about changing patterns to either go down 10th or 7th if you're needing to turn left to get onto that road. As far as the
But Sean, can I just?
Yeah.
Okay, what happens then is all the traffic goes down those two streets, and those residents have to put up with all the traffic.
Yeah, well, it is a downtown area, Jean, and in the transportation master plan that's been around for 20 years, both 10th and 7th have been seen as their major routes to around the downtown area. And as we grow in population, you'll continue to see that, because 7th and 10th, they are essentially downtown. And so that's part of the reality. As far as the traffic lights, I haven't heard any concerns about that. So I'm sorry to hear that you've had that bad experience. I would certainly encourage you to submit your concerns to report a problem, or to you could actually send it to the parking at canmore.ca, and I'm sure it would get looked at. Andy, do you have any additional data or anything to add with respect to the intersections and especially the safety of crossing in the downtown area, or with regards to the left-hand turn?
Thank you, Mayor Krausert, and thank you, Jean, for the question. I'm just looking at the last few years' data on collisions, and I believe since it's been made into, it's called a scramble, where you have all the pedestrian movements happening at one time, and then the vehicle movements happen separately. And it's a way of separating out pedestrians from moving cars to each give their own space. Previously, you could use the crosswalks and vehicles would be turning at the same time in gaps, and that's considered to be less safe. So I believe there have been a number of serious pedestrian incidents. In fact, a woman was killed at this intersection quite a long time ago. So certainly one that we are keen to see be safe. It's used quite extensively, and the intent of making it into a scramble was to make it safe. I'm not seeing in the data from the time it's been converted to a scramble a significant number of collisions, but it's something that I can dig into some more. I'm not sure what, maybe you can just elaborate on what you're seeing that you feel is unsafe.
I haven't really seen any collisions, but I've sure seen lots of people that have no idea what to do. And I've also heard that from many people that say that's a terrible corner, and they don't know, they just don't know what they're supposed to do. And turning right on that, if you're in a car, is also a problem, because you have to wait behind the vehicle in front of you before you can turn right. And by the time you get up to 8th Avenue, the light has changed and you can't turn right anymore.
Yeah, that was another.
It just seems amazing.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say, Jean. One, the last thing you pointed out is what the reality we have to deal with our roads are small downtown. They weren't originally designed for larger volumes of traffic, which is all the more reason to encourage mode shift where possible. Not everybody can, but for those who can, to look at alternative means. The other thing you said about, with people, doing, whatever things, it never fails to amaze me. And I see this too, just like you and Jean, just like everybody on the call, people just doing some, crazy things out there. And it comes right down to not being attentive to the signage, not being attentive to the rules of the road. And unfortunately, we need to, be on extra guard for those of us, just in case somebody's going to do that. But, it comes down to human error, and it really doesn't have to do with the design of the intersection in question. It really is about people not obeying the rules. And it's very, very clearly marked there that there are no right turns on red, that there are, the signals are very clear when you're allowed to go and when you're not allowed to go. And it's when people fail to follow those rules that it makes it a difficult situation for all of us. So thanks for raising that. Thanks for raising that concern, Jean.
I'm just surprised you haven't heard complaints, because everybody I know complains about that intersection. But I understand what you're saying, but it is different, and not being able to turn on right is something we used to always be able to do here. So you have to give people that that grace period, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the turning right on red, it's amazing the number of people that I've driven with that come from other jurisdictions, and they say, "What? You're allowed to do that here?" you know, and when you're talking about
Not anymore.
yeah, well, and actually that's a good thing, especially when there's a high pedestrian zone, and especially when there's people that are unfamiliar with the areas and they're walking, because you'll see it. People will just jump out onto the road and they won't look. And if you're making a right-hand turn and you're doing your shoulder check and then you thought it was clear in front of you, you go, that's when people get hit. And so, as Andy was describing, separating out when cars move and people move is actually the safest way to go, because it reduces the opportunity for conflict. Great.
Thanks very much
Gene.
for your questions and comments, Gene. Mayor Krausert, we do have another question submitted through the chat. The question is, will there be improved snow removal on all Canmore paths and trails to encourage walking and biking in the winter?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're moving to on the main transit corridors. We've just recently been briefed about, and we've approved the project in this current budget, about the Bow River West upgrades. So there are trails that are used quite well and can be, you know, main transit corridors for walking and biking, but they're gravel. And where you have gravel roads, or you have steep grades, or you have bridges that are you know, wooden, it makes it hard to do the upkeep. And so with the Bow River West improvements, we're connecting an asphalt pavement, creating separate walking and biking zones in certain areas where appropriate, replacing 2 bridges, changing the grades. And what that's all going to do, besides making it safer for the user whenever they're using it, it's also going to allow for maintenance in the winter. You know, you know, when you have, especially with asphalt, and I've seen this I live in the Kruger Creek area, and one side of the pathway is one side of the creek is asphalt, and one side of the creek is gravel. Well, we saw this during the pandemic when people were just getting out and about. So many people were walking. That pathway, that asphalt, was used so much because between sunshine, even in below 0 temperatures, it tends to cause the melting and clearing naturally of the roadway. Plus, it allows very easily for the town. They have the little brusher truck that can go along and brush it off. But you can't do that if it's gravel. You just be, you know, first of all, you get some ice and everything built up in there. It doesn't go away. You get gravel shooting all over the place. It's just a mess. And then it's still not safe. So, you know, yes, the answer is yes, but it does take time to get the pathways that we need to be able to maintain all year round to the state where they can be maintained. And that's a process, and we're in the midst of that process. Mr. Asarte, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, thanks.
Great, thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that. We don't currently have any further questions or requests to speak, so I'll look to you, Mayor Krausert, and see if there's anything you'd like to say to wrap it up, or anything further you want to add.
No, I want to be as available as possible to people. People have reached out to me by email. I've gone and had coffee with people, stopping me on the street or in the grocery store. And I want people to be able to get answers for their questions, so that they're not having to fill them in with uncertainties or you know, fill in the blank with what may not be accurate information, etc. And so that's why these town halls, I would like to have continue to move forward. It's just one more opportunity for people to ask some questions. You won't necessarily, as you've seen today, you won't necessarily get the answer to the question that you want, or it might not be completely satisfactory to you, but at least you've had an opportunity to ask that question, and hopefully you've got some good information, or at least understand the process or the thinking behind whatever it is that you're asking. So I thank everybody for attending today. I do encourage you to reach out with your questions and concerns, and we'll do our best to get them answered. And so at least you will have that information to work with. And I look forward to the next town hall, which I expect that we'll probably be doing, given that it's now April. I'm not sure if we have one planned before the summer, but if not, it will be immediately after the summer. But we're going to do another couple this year. And so keep your eyes open for them. And it will be the same format, or unless we adjust it slightly based on the learnings along the way. But we'll present I'll present a little bit at the start, but then as we did today, open it up. So I wish everyone a fantastic day. I thank you very much for attending today and asking your questions. And I wish you all very well.
Thank you very much, Mayor Krausert, and thanks everyone for your time. We wish you a good day.
Good. Thank you.